Well, good evening and welcome back to Hold My Mic, where the stories are real, but your sanity after watching these stories might be in question. This is a show where we don't go looking for badness. The badness literally signs in at the reception and hands us the folder. Tonight, President William Ruto is a case study on why you don't start a war while standing in another man's compound. Meanwhile, Kenya and Uganda are apparently at the stage of a relationship where you share clothes, you share passwords, a toothbrush, and occasionally an entire fuel infrastructure. And that's not all. We'll also explain to you why forex traders and mulot boys may need new careers if Kenya is indeed to catch up with Singapore. And just exactly what do you think happens when your toxic ex and your new wife meet? Well, the people of Mbeere North have the answer. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Willis Raburu. We begin. Drop the beat!
Hold my mic, yeah, hold my mic, 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 hold my mic.
Now let's talk about marriage. When a man divorces his wife and takes in a new one, and the two meet at the village square, what is likely to happen? The answer? Chaos, drama, words flying around like the Kibra toilets. No punch too low, no accusation too wild, and no audience too small to witness the fireworks. But, don't take my word for it, perhaps the old man Wetangula can explain it to you much better.
If anybody wants a divorce, it will be messy, it will be noisy, and it will not be easy.
Deputy President Kindiki and his predecessor Gachagua or Rigiji, are going at each other's throats for the better part of last 2 weeks in Mbeere North, each chasing votes in favor of their preferred candidates. Now, this is a good point to note that the Mbeere North by-election was on Thursday this week, and by the time you're watching this, clearly a winner has already been announced. But the political fireworks between these two has been too messy, too loud, and far too delicious to ignore.
Mliua watoto wetu na Kindiki. Kindiki ndiye alikuwa CS Interior, ukampatia amri akaua watoto wetu.
Regarding Gachagua nitakuaibisha, wachana na mimi.
Now, it started innocent enough. The small things, the soft life gestures. Gachagua taking his morning strolls, popping into villagers' homes like a long-lost uncle returning from Nairobi with stories and indeed an appetite. One day, he's having porridge in Kanyuambora. The next day, it's mandazi in Chicago. And just when you think the man is done, boom! He's seated somewhere else, buttering bread. Then Kindiki saw this and must have thought, so this is the game we are playing. Watch and let it fire. He too started making his rounds. If Gachagua had his tea, Kindiki had his uji. If Gachagua had uji, Kindiki had githeri. By day 3, it was starting to look like a political contest and more like breakfast Olympics, complete with competitive chewing. At some point, Mbeere North residents didn't even know which of them to expect. They'd just hear a knock at 7 a.m. and whip out the thermos. Mbeere North residents have made more breakfast this month than they probably have all year. Now, if this campaign went on any longer, villagers would have started charging entry fees and offering meal plans. And that's how it began, with the gentle art of breakfast diplomacy, before everything escalated into a full-blown political soap opera.
Saa ile Kasongo alituma hii soprano na pesa na magunia na helikopta.
Unasunguka hapa ukiniita sijui soprano, sijui Kasongo, sijui soprano. Ukitaka nitakuvua nguo. I'm telling you. Waendelea na hiyo kierere.
Now here's the annoying part of this whole drama. Neither of these two gentlemen were actually candidates for Mbeere North. I'm convinced there are voters in that constituency who up till now are confused by the names they saw on those ballot papers because they probably did not recognize any of them since they never heard their voices during the campaign, period, at all. And by the way, this is the guy that won. 1,000 bob, if you can tell me his name. 1,000. I'll wait. What should have been a simple process of electing someone to represent the people morphed into a telenovela-style battle between a toxic ex who had refused to move on and the new spouse trying to desperately assert authority in the house. And the man they were both fighting to get His attention was across the fence at the neighbor's compound, giving away the house spare keys. And yet you people say, Luo women are the worst. Aworo we are.
Zingine anayekupenda umpendi, unapenda mwingine anayependa mwingine atasempenaga na kila mtu.
All right, and speaking of marriage, the Vatican has officially reminded the world's 1.4 billion Catholics that one spouse is enough. Not two, not a main one and a side one, just one. The directive approved by Pope Leo reaffirms that marriage is meant to be a lifelong commitment between one man and one woman. And yes, it also gently rebukes polygamy, especially in parts of Africa where tradition once said, if the harvest was good, ongeza bibi, add another one. Rome has now said, harvest cancelled, watu waende nyumbani. Vatican officials stress that Catholics should not maintain multiple sexual relationships, which is awkward news for anyone currently managing, wait for it, a wife, a future wife, just a friend, and shh, don't tell anyone. All these at the same time. The church also emphasized lifelong commitment, meaning once you choose forever, through thick and thin, through watching boiled water boil, through bad cooking, through bad Wi-Fi. Everyone is watching. Sources confirm the announcement sent shockwaves across people who are compound living, who are family elders, several men who are spiritually married on Sunday but emotionally available by Tuesday. And as of tonight, Catholic worldwide have been advised no squads, no rotation, no spiritual polygamy, just one partner, one marriage, one set of in-laws for life. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is tonight's gospel according to reality. Now, what would you do if your neighbor walks into your compound, finds your baby playing, picks him up, and takes him away, claiming that the baby is his, even though this very neighbor does not have a wife, and rumors going around in the village suggest that he might even be infertile? The only right answer to that question is that you storm the neighbor's home, punch them in the face, and take back your baby. President William Ruto recently found himself in this situation when Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni made the ridiculous claim that the Indian Ocean belongs to him. As if that was not enough, the old man with a hat went ahead to threaten Kenya, warning that there will be wars in the future if he is denied access to the ocean.
That ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I am entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars.
Okay. Museveni is 81 years old and has been the president of Uganda since, forever! Okay, since 1986. That's longer than the internet has existed in Africa. We see when Museveni took office, phones weren't smart, cars were not automatic, and TikTok rather was something the birds did. So, because in the African culture we do not argue with the elderly, we can forgive him and his slip-up sometimes. Perhaps he hadn't taken his medicine before sitting for that interview. But here are the facts. Uganda is a landlocked state, and under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, landlocked states cannot claim ownership of any part of the ocean. Coastal states such as Kenya exercise full sovereignty over their territorial waters. However, this law guarantees landlocked countries the right to access to and from the sea, along with the freedom of transit through neighboring states. Transit states are therefore required to facilitate such access. Now, picture a blind man who wants to cross the road but has to wait for a good Samaritan to hold his hand and guide him across. Kenya is the good Samaritan in this scenario, and Uganda is, of course, the blind man, judging by their voting decisions. Uganda cannot access the ocean without Kenya's help. Museveni should be polishing Ruto's shoes every morning, chewing his breakfast for him to swallow, while begging to be facilitated to cross the Indian Ocean. Now, that statement by Museveni generated a lot of heat online. And Kenyans have been waiting for the president to respond. And he finally did when he was in Uganda last weekend.
Journalist space, and it is good I speak about it here, tried to create an impression that Uganda had said something to the effect that they need to access the sea by all means. Let me assure the naysayers that Uganda and Kenya are brothers and sisters.
Wait a minute. Did he just accuse the media of lying? Let's listen to Museveni one more time carefully.
That ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I'm entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars.
There. Those words came out of Sebo's own mouth. Do you want another up? First of all, in the middle of a diplomatic debate between Kenya and Uganda, the Kenyan president flew all the way to Uganda, not to address that particular incident, but to launch, wait for it, a steel manufacturing plant. Kenyans must be so lucky. Yani jamaa amewafanyia kazi sana. Mpaka ameona sasa asiwaue na development sana. Waacha peleke zingine huko kwa jirani jameni. Kwenye jirani kuna mambo.
Makofi. Hiyo ni Kiingereza tupu.
It must be remembered that the threat by Uganda to go to war with Kenya also came just after Museveni had unlawfully detained 2 Kenyan activists in what he very carelessly called a fridge for 38 days. An act Kenya also took lying down with a tail between its legs like a good boy. Kenya's founding father Jomo Kenyatta must be turning in his grave right now, because in 1976, when the Uganda president Idi Amin Dada made remarks suggesting that he wanted to make a move on Kenya's territory, Jomo Kenyatta furiously told him, and I quote, "Go to hell and dream there." You can say whatever you want about him, but good old Jomo would have not taken this disrespect. Now here's something else about Ruto and Museveni that will also shock you. So, the Ruto government has been pushing for the sale of some state corporations it says are not making any profits. And one of those on the chopping board is the Kenya Pipeline Company. Apparently, the government will sell off 65% of the Kenya Pipeline Company and remain with just 35%. And guess who the president wants to sell of all of the 65% to? That's right, our favorite hungry old man with a hat once again, Museveni.
Kenya will be divesting up to 65%, and I am happy that Uganda is prepared to co-invest with us, because that Kenya pipeline facility is not just a Kenyan facility. It is a regional facility.
So let me get this straight. Your neighbor sneaks into your compound, tries to steal one of the children without paperwork or permission, without even wiping his shoes at the gate, and your response to it is to smile with him, shake his hand, take tea in his house, and then offer him another child with majority of the shared custody. What is going on at State House, ladies and gentlemen? Who advises this man? At this point, Kenya is just like that girlfriend who gets cheated on, catches the man in the act, listens to him explain why it's not what it looks like, then apologizes to him and cooks him dinner. We're in a situationship with our own sovereignty. We are soft launching our national assets like Instagram boyfriends. We are submitting ourselves to red flags with the enthusiasm of someone who thinks love can fix a man who hasn't changed since 1986. Because truly, if your neighbor tries to steal your child and you respond by offering them another one, my friend, that's not diplomacy. That is Stockholm Syndrome. Now, you probably heard this a million times already, but apparently the president wants to transform Kenya into Singapore. Yes, that Singapore. The clean one, the disciplined one, the third least corrupt nation in the world. Yes, that one. The Singapore where even chewing gum is basically a felony. Yes, that one.
Imagine Singapore was like Kenya 60 years ago.
Singapore and Kenya were the same countries 60 years ago, because we can see in Singapore what right decisions can make of a country.
This man has mentioned Singapore so many times. I'm convinced if you tap his forehead gently, a Singapore tourism ad might start playing. He says, Singapore, the way Nairobi men say, bro, every 5 seconds when they're drinking. Bro, you know I got you, my guy. At this rate, I wouldn't be shocked if he renames Uhuru Highway to Orchard Road. And he even has a plan on how he wants to achieve this for the low price of 5 trillion Kenya shillings only. You know, pocket change. The kind of money you find when you shake the couch properly after sitting on it the whole afternoon. Just loose trillions rolling out like breadcrumbs. You know, no big deal.
Achieving these 4 priorities will require at least 5 trillion.
The man is committed, I'll give him that. Kenya might not be Singapore yet, but the Singapore is in his mind. Or that one, he's already thriving, and it's not exactly a bad thing to dream big, not at all. I mean, even at the height of the finance bill protests, Kenyans were very clear that they did not have a problem with paying more taxes. The issue is where the taxes go. Because if I'm paying the road maintenance levy, then why are there no roads yet the Transport Cabinet Secretary is wearing a watch at the price of my car? But not to worry, if the president wants Kenya to be like Singapore, then before we start hiking taxes to raise the 5 trillion Kenya shillings and spark a fresh wave of protests, how about we emulate a new law that Singapore has just passed and which will cost a whooping, wait for it, 0 shillings. Now, according to the government of Singapore, scamming is one of the country's most prevalent crimes, with over 51,000 cases reported in 2024, leading to a total loss of 840 million US dollars. That is about 109 trillion Kenya shillings. And so to deal with this vice, the country has introduced caning, chapa.
The first category of amendments will enhance deterrence against scams by introducing caning for scammers and scam mules while recalibrating its use in other offenses.
Mr. President, if you're really serious about this Singaporean dream, then don't even overthink it. Just start right here. Bring caning to Kenya, tafadhali. For once, no tenders, no contractors, no inflated budgets, no feasibility study, no task force, no 2-year report launched in a hotel ballroom. Just kiboko, the cane. Mr. President, let us fix this country through vibes and violence. And start where the real scammers are. Hapa tu. And when you're done there, Mr. President, rush down to your own backyard of Mulot, the Harvard of scamming, where every young man has a diploma in applied M-Pesa engineering and a minor in SIM replacement without consent. I guarantee you, Mr. President, that if you introduce caning today, about lunchtime tomorrow, half of this country will be walking sideways. You might even need a whole new ministry, the Ministry of Buttock Recovery and Rehabilitation. And there's really only one person fit to handle this new position. I mean, let's be honest, some callings are spiritual, some are academic, but this one was ordained. Bwana, tap her in, coach, tap her in. Now, let's cross over. Politicians are a special kind of breed. You know this already. They don't just steal, they also invent new ways to steal. Politicians are like the apple of corruption. Every year, a newer, sleeker, faster, more efficient model of siphoning public funds is invented. They will loot during a global pandemic when the rest of us are locked in the house, baking banana bread. They're busy sanitizing tenders, invoices, and bank accounts. And when war breaks out, normal human beings run for shelter. But politicians, oh, no. They run for procurement opportunities. Bombs are falling. Missiles are slicing the sky. But somewhere in a dimly lit office, an official is whispering, adjust those figures. Kidogo tu. Which brings us to Ukraine, a country literally fighting for its life. Winter is freezing people. Drones are buzzing overhead. Families are fleeing. Soldiers are fighting in the trenches. And someone somewhere still found the peace of mind to look at $100 million meant for the war and say, oof, this is looking very idle. Let me give it some purpose. Because yes, in the midst of a brutal war, members of the Ukraine energy sector went full Mulot Boys Deluxe, siphoning off money meant for power and fuel. Imagine stealing funds meant to keep hospitals warm, lights on, and generators running for the soldiers on the front. Money for transformers, repairs, emergency fuel. Money that literally keeps a country alive through winter blackouts. Money for generators, spare parts, and the power repairs, the sort of money that stops people from freezing and hospitals from going dark. This is $100 million. All of this ended up in private pockets. And the plot twist? Some of the people knee-deep in this mess, investigations now suggest, are very close friends of the country's president, Zelensky. Now picture this. This man has been fighting Putin for almost 2 years, sleeping 4 hours a week, living on hope and energy drinks, and then he turns around only to find his own people running a side hustle inside a war. So Zelensky did what most African presidents will never seem to do. He fired all of them, these friends, the entire energy ministry, gone, quick, decisive, and with no feelings attached. And honestly, you can't even blame him. Now, if you're stealing war money, then what won't you steal? But the irony is not lost on us. Zelensky has been begging the world for aid, fighting for every coin, every dollar, every generator. And meanwhile, his own friends were running a Black Friday sale inside the ministry. Now, if this was Kenya, we already know how it would go. There would be a task force, then a tribunal, then a commission of inquiry, then a 600-page report at a fancy hotel, and then everybody gets promoted. But Ukraine, nope, no games. Zelensky said, you're stealing while Putin is bombing us, eh? Wacha tu. And he wiped that office cleaner than a Luo man's Friday shoes. Now in this life, may your enemies be far, but may your friends not be this close. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it's Nairobi, Kiev, when the lights go out, the thieves suddenly get very, very creative. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we leave it at. If you have survived tonight's episode without needing therapy, congratulations, you're officially insane. My name is Willis Raburu, and this has been another edition of Hold My Mic. Tuonane tena.
Hold my mic. Yeah, hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hold my mic.